One of the things that we try to do with each one of our council meetings is to have a little bit of data shared with us about our region. And that regional data then relates to our topic. And today, our topic is looking at the 60 by 30 and how this region is making progress. So Dr. Barbara Bush is going to share our regional data, and then Christine will move right on into our program, if that sounds good with everybody. Okay?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Oh, great, thank you.
See, I got them all for you.
Exactly. Well, Jean told you I would be presenting regional data updated, but I'm not.
Oh,
presenting regional data at this point related to the discussion. I think at our last executive council meeting, what I said I was going to present, because we don't have the new data, as you know, it's starting to become more accessible to us. So we thought we'd look at how we've been looking at the data we have already. And one of the ways, and we talk about that to make sure this works, is to look at now some of you understand all this and have it worked with intersectionality. The whole is addressing, when we look at our data, what is it and how can it help us to better analyze gaps in educational journeys if we use intersectionality? Now you may wonder what intersectionality is. As a definition here, it's a term founded by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. It's a theoretical framework for understanding how aspects of one's social and political identities might combine to create unique modes of discrimination. And look at it that way. There are various forms, and this is just a few of the areas we'll be looking at. How does social stratification, such as class, race, sexual orientation, age, religion, creed, disability, and gender, how does that all work together to give us a picture of our students, give a picture of where we are? I'm going to use some of our older data to show you what I mean by that. And one of them is, this is an idea of the population between 20,000 and 2010 by ethnicity. Now, in essence, this is one family. As you see here, we have these numbers and the projection numbers, and I've actually shown this before, of what we see about our population during that period of time, 18 to 35, in our region and in the state. So that's just an example of what we have. If we start looking at things specific to, and I notice we're going to be talking about English language arts and mathematics, I think that's part of the focus. From 2006 to it, look what we have here. We have the state, and we have our particular districts, and we actually identify them by ethnicity. We have here, where in the same format, we identify the population by gender. And we can say here, well, in the state, the number that is decreasing regarding college graduates during that time, or has increased during college, by gender. This is another one that gives you a little bit more of an idea of what we're talking about. College going rate of female high school graduates enrolled in Texas. This is from that area. We see that we have them by gender, we have them listed, and we can at least get a picture on this graph as to where that enrollment in post-secondary education was going during that period of time. We also have separately males during that period of time and where they're going in terms of the graph that you see here, the line graph that you see. Then we have in a separate category economically disadvantaged high school graduates who are enrolled in post-secondary education this period. So we see the graph, we can get some idea of the percentages and how they've changed. So you see three different graphs. You see ethnicity, you see gender, you see economic disadvantage. The idea in intersectionality is if you take out one portion, let's say for example, you're looking at the number of African American females enrolled in higher education during this time. you dig deeper into the data and look at what's happening to those that are also economically disadvantaged. So what it does is it gives you a better picture of specific student populations. So the question is, how can looking at our data with an intersectionality in mind inform our decisions? That's kind of a rhetorical question, but if anyone has any comments regarding it, how can looking at how these factors interact, do you have some idea of how that might better inform how we work with our students for student success? You don't have to answer, just think about it. It's a thought question. And even in what we hear about our data, what we hear about our populations today, what we keep hearing about our populations, I just ask that you keep this whole concept, this framework of intersectionality in mind. It's something that's been used more and more in higher education research because individuals are calling out, okay, this may not pertain to this particular group because they're economically disadvantaged, even though they may have some commonalities in terms of ethnicity and gender. So that's a question I'm posing to you and presenting it as such, as a thought question. Any thoughts or questions? I said it's a thought question, so any thoughts? Any thoughts or questions that come to mind? Do we have?
This data looks somewhat familiar because our chancellor really looked at the data from our region, particularly Dallas County, to charge us to think differently about how we do dual credit, how we work with high schools. It led to Dallas County Promise and the number of partnerships we have now. So, because one of the things, and we just discussed this yesterday in our chancellor staff, one of the things that we're seeing is an increase in either dual credit or recent high school grads as a result of the initiatives. The adult population, we would definitely like to increase, but with adults, you have factors and variables that may be beyond the control of higher education. And we've done the Hope study, we've done trellis research on financial wellness of our adult population. And because we serve a community that has a significant proportion of low-income students, they bring with them challenges that we're trying to address through our community colleges, and partner with our community agencies, but there's so many reasons why they could withdraw. One bill that they didn't accept means that they cannot continue going to school full-time. They have to reduce to part-time or they have to drop out. And so the question is, how do we impact that population as well from a more holistic perspective? But in the meantime, we're really trying to strengthen the high school to higher ed pipeline so that the students can enter adulthood with a living wage, and when they have challenges, can afford to address them. So that's really, something that we've been talking about.
And one of the things, one of the things to keep in mind when you see these particular categories, economically disadvantaged, male, female, ethnicity, etc., is that many times you'll see them, and I just saw this the other day as the data that was talking about, we're going to look at these groups by ethnicity, or people of color, by women. So in essence, can you see some issue there with intersectionality? When you're talking about women, who are you talking about? Because you're also talking about, if you have another category, people of color, and then who are the women? how they actually, are you talking about two, are you talking about the other? And those are just some of the things that to keep in mind when looking at these data. These are questions to be raised, questions that are to be raised rather when we are presented with certain data. What do those data represent exactly if they're in certain categories? So thank you for sharing that. Thank you, and I think this will be just more time for everyone. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm having to get everything turned on. Okay, so we should be set now. I'm Christine Hubbard, and I'm in charge of the panel today. I'm also honored to serve on our North Texas Regional P16 Council, and then also on the volunteer group for the 60x30 Texas Metroplex Region. And so today we wanted to talk about successes and challenges in our region as we work to meet 60x30 Texas goals. So we've been working really heavily on this, and we've had numerous meetings around the region, but I know that we've spent more time thinking about this probably than you've had the chance to because you have other things that you're working on. So what I wanted to start with were two handouts that I put in everyone's place. Over the last year and a half, we've been working across Texas in a number of different regions to identify how we as individual institutions, but then also as a region, can meet 60x30 Texas goals. And that yielded, Marlon, yay! That yielded a set of regional strategies and a regional action plan. So I wanted to make sure that before we start our panel discussion, that we make sure that we have a baseline understanding of 60x30 Texas, what we're doing as a region in terms of the strategies that we said we wanted to take to meet our goals, and then also our action plan for this year, which was halfway over at this point, so that we can talk about what we've done in that area and then also the plans that we have. So if you look at the Metroplex Regional Strategies, I love that the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board supported all of us by creating these nice graphs that show our regions. And so you see that we've got, I think there are 51 institutions in the Metroplex region. We knew that. We knew that there are a whole lot of us, and that the students that we serve overlap all of our institutions, and that we have to work together for the mutual support of our students. But I think this graph really helps to illustrate it so that you can get a sense of where we are. You'll also see a good overlay of the other kinds of regions that also exist and then overlap this area. Because as you know, everybody works in silos, and so the coordinating board identifies what it wants regions of the state to be. And TEA identifies what it wants regions of the state to be. The Texas Workforce Commission identifies what it wants regions of the state to be. And none of them are exactly the same. But at least this shows us how they all overlap and intersect. We're always talking about intersectionality, right? And when we're looking at data for any one of these, it probably makes sense to see how we actually overlap and which things are part of the data, which things might be left out. So you'll see that this is our region for 60x30 Texas Metroplex purposes. In terms of education service centers, we cover 10 and 11. And then in terms of Texas workforce development areas, you'll see that we have 4, 5, 6, and 25. Okay? So hopefully, wherever it is you work, you see yourself somewhere on this page. That's the goal. All right, so now that we've identified who we are, let's flip to the back side and talk about the strategies that we've identified. Basically, the state asked us as a region to come together. They actually asked us to convene everybody that you see listed on this graph in the front to talk together about what we see as the major challenges in our region, what we see as the major opportunities in our region, so that we can meet our goals. And out of those meetings that happened, somewhere over the last now? Yeah. We came up with these strategies. So let's look at them. As a region, we're asked to focus on 3 specific things. Okay, there are 4 goals of 60 by 30 Texas. One is an overall goal for educated population. And you'll see that as a region, we were supposed to identify how we would help to meet that goal of educated population. It's probably not the first time you've heard it, but I'm going to remind you what the criteria are. Okay, by 2030, 60% of Texans, whether they started here or moved in, will have a post-secondary credential. What does that mean? Certificate, associate, bachelor's, or master's degree. Okay, and so when we get into the land of acronyms, it's CABM, right? So what are we going to do in the region to get there? We said that in order to help meet that educated population goal, we were going to partner with Metroplex institutions and organizations to facilitate expansive pathways in support of non-traditional students. So basically we identified that we're not going to be able to get there just with the students who are coming through the K-12 pipeline. We also need to bring in those people who went out into the workforce, who have no college or some college but no degree, and specifically target military population, veterans, who may be underserved because they have competencies earned in the military, but they have not had those translated into academic credit that could accelerate them towards a degree. So we're looking at that, and then also other interventions for adult learners, competency-based education, and then also a transition for people who start in adult education programs, so people with limited English proficiency, people who need to get their GED, and move them into pathways that lead to a C, A, B, or M. The second is to partner with Metroplex agencies, chambers of commerce, and other organizations. By the way, that's you. Basically, we're saying we wanted to work with the P16 Council to align higher education pathways with employment opportunities and required skills. Everybody understand that? Great. All right, and we're going to get in a minute to what you're doing in that area. Second was completion. Okay, and so the completion goal for the state is that 550,000 students in the year 2030 will graduate with a C, A, B, or M in that year. Okay, so we have to be able to ramp up to where we have that many students graduating with something by the year 2030. And oh, by the way, we only got 10 years now, okay, because we're in 2020. So we were going to partner with secondary and post-secondary institutions to develop pathways for transfer students. Streamline transfer and optimize credit application towards degree programs. Why is that important? Because we have this many institutions all sitting on top of each other. And our students attend up to 3 institutions simultaneously, some of them. And so streamlining transfer is really important. And then number 3, high school to higher education. This is the third piece that's actually not articulated in the statewide plan, but that each region has been asked to address. And this is that by 2030, 65% of all graduating high school students will enroll in higher education within a year after graduation. So we're trying to get people to go directly from high school into higher ed. Because we know if they stop out, go to work, that they're less likely to come back. We've lost them, right? But if we can move them directly into some kind of post-secondary credential right after high school, then that will help us meet our completion and our educated population goals. So how are we going to do that? Through partnerships among education service centers, ISDs, IHEs, to develop and offer 12th grade college prep courses recognized at Metroplex community colleges and universities. But basically we said you've got one population that's already going to be an advanced academic. They're already going to be able to take dual credit. But you're also going to have some students who aren't college ready as they come into their senior year. So those college prep courses exist for a reason, to help bridge that gap so a student can move directly into higher education. So we said we wanted to work on that. Second, partner with secondary and post-secondary institutions and organizations to improve college credit offerings taken by secondary school students such as dual credit, AP, IB, and early college high school. And then support the advising in those areas. So basically we're treating both student populations, right? Those who aren't yet college ready and those who are while they're still in high school. All right, so then with that, we move into the action plan. I'm not going to read this ahead of time because that's what y'all are going to be talking about. But basically, we said we wanted to do this. The regional action plan is what we're doing this year to make that happen. Okay, and so with that, I'm going to turn to our esteemed panelists. I believe that You've been introduced to all but one, so I'm going to start. Marlon, will you go ahead and introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. Is it on?
Just pop it. It takes 30 seconds. Where did you do that?
Here I am. Yeah, all right. My name is Marlon Mote. I'm the District Director for Institutional Effectiveness Accreditation and Planning, which is a really long title. I'm also the SAC-COC liaison for the institution, and I've been a member of this advisory panel for 2.5 years.
From the beginning.
From the beginning. So glad to be here.
We're going to pass it back to Troy, because I'm going to start with you. All right, so we're going to start with the first goal, educated population. We said as a region that we're going to reach out to adult non-traditional learners through PLA, military credit, CBE, and AEL transition. So Troy, tell us about the work that's happening related to military credit.
Glad to, Chris. And if you'll flip to the action plan, the second page. I know these documents look similar, but just bear with it. And you will see on the second page, I believe it is, it says 2019-20 planned activities. Finding that one? 2019-20 planned activities, and go to the second to last bullet. And I'm going to give you 10 seconds to kind of scan that. Or 5 seconds. Because this is the action plan aspect I'll kick off with. And as I kick this off, I think it's important, who had the wake-up call this morning? Jean Keller. Jean in here?
Yep. Yes, I'm back.
So Jean and I, Jean gave me a wake-up call, and I think it's very important for this group. Because even as I was preparing and I read the tri-agency report to the governor that has these indications that in 2027 there will be 75,000 more high school graduates. Marlon's probably late because of the traffic, because so many Californians are moving here. We all are inundated with the glory of being the place to live, right? And what I find at my university and in some groups that I get with is, and then especially reflected when I go out of state, is that Texas is believed to be the land of milk and honey. And that these goals and this growth are slam dunks. And having 4 children and myself, 3 in public school right now, and a French exchange student experience our system, you know, Courtney, the work that you're doing in Denton that connects careers and puts that information in schools is very important. And that's just one example, because this is not a slam dunk. As I've run the numbers, Barbara, for our institution, which needs to graduate a lot of students to make this work. We're going to have to, UTA, which is a big producer already, has to continue growing. We have had tremendous growth in degrees awarded, now we're evening out. And so the historical growth of 1,000 more degrees a year is not happening. And based on all the demographics I've got, it won't. And in fact, to help our deans understand the urgency here, I've taken 100,000 people that move into the Metroplex all the time. And Elizabeth, thanks for help with data people, because you connected me with some great data to confirm this. Out of 100,000 people, our deans would think that, well, Troy, we're going to be able to easily get 500 new freshmen out of that, right? Just at my institution, right? That makes sense based on the traffic, right? Based on tax valuations, right? It feels that way. But folks, what Jean pointed out, this is not easy and not going to be a slam dunk. And part of the changing demographics and intersectionality is the changing first gen, the lower income, those shifts that are happening. So even though this report might say 75,000 more high school grads, that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy for any of us. So whether it's Courtney's work or the work with academies, et cetera, this is going to be a challenge, because out of that 100,000, if that demographically means 20 more freshmen, if, maybe 25, mathematically, that's it. And this is using some Dallas Regional Chamber data based on those 100,000 aren't 15, 16, 17-year-olds, right? Think about it. And so what you feel may feel assuring, but there's a sense of urgency that Gene pointed out to me that I think is really important, because these growth rates are high. To go from 40 to 60, okay, what are we at? Yeah, it's 42 or 43, depends what you measure. That's a 50% increase in the percentage of the population that has CAMB or CABM, or what the abbreviation CABM. These are really big goals. And right now, the Metroplex is 7,000 students away from meeting the first goal. We're at 92% for meeting the goal in 2020, and that's degrees awarded. And I'm telling you, one of the biggest producers of degrees is not going to grow that much, right? And so to reach these is going to take us all. And that's why then these kinds of projects come up, because in our Metroplex Regional Advisory Group is an amazing team of people, all volunteers in case you don't know, from region service centers to community colleges to universities, and I probably left out some other groups that are on there, but small group, but committed and dedicated, doing their daily work, but trying to add on. It's kind of like that Louisiana word, lagniappe, you know, something a little extra. This is more than just something a little extra. It's a lot of work. And so we pick these specific tactics like this bullet here. And the issue that arose, and again, it's even in this tri-agency report, is how do you make sure that military credit is given so that more degrees are awarded? And as we drill into it, we very quickly think about our relatives, our students, our experiences. These are people that have served our country, and then they have these credits. And then they may start at UTA thinking that they want to study there, and then they end up Rosalind with you at TCC, and then before you know it, they're at Tarleton, to finish up a degree. But that swirling can be challenging when the credit comes together, right? And what we want to do as a Metroplex on this example is to convene Metroplex-wide institutions that care and have concern about this to try to have similar practices across all of us. There's a joint services transcript, there is a community college of the Air Force, there is ACE credit, American Council on Education, and the Navy is about to launch a community college. And so how we all treat that credit, you know, a servicewoman who has been through a leadership course, how does that count? And will Troy's institution count it the same as Rosalind's, same as Barbara's, etc., Courtney's? And so this year we've committed to have 2 convenings in the state so that we drill into that. And what an amazing team effort. As we put this together, we didn't really know how many people would even show up for this, because it was the first time to bring these people together. That's not to say there aren't convenings about veteran issues, because there are, and there have been long-standing. Our university has a Veterans Upward Bound program. But when it comes to getting everyone together to talk about how do you treat the JSF, Joint Services Transcript, and I hope some of these acronyms you're picking up on because they'll come up again and again. How do you treat the ACE credit? How do you treat the training that these servicemen and women received? And not so much on the benefits side, by the way, that's a whole other topic, but most institutions that's federally and state regulated, and we're doing pretty well in the Metroplex to be sure that the benefits, although we're finding that our servicemen and women's dependents need to get more of those benefits, and actually that's a thread we may get into a little bit. But back to the credit being the main focus of this. So to very surgically address this topic, not to convene in general kinds of terms about all things related to military men and women, but specifically about a topic, surgically. We had some excellent panel representatives from across the Metroplex. We had representatives from Killeen to Wichita Falls, not in our region areas, that heard about this, and 70 people convened in December for the first half-day meeting. And I really have to thank Trinity River Campus, Tarrant County Community College, just an amazing facility and amazing professionals that helped us have a place and a format that really allowed us to dive into this. The first meeting was meant to be an exploration and a sharing of information. Where are we now? Where are you now? What problems and issues and opportunities do you see? The second meeting is being planned right now, will be in April, May. And that meeting will be about a 3/4 day meeting. So now we know these threads and themes that were shared. Now we're going to package those together so we can have breakouts, so we can discuss the specifics of the joint services transcript issue or the ACE credit issue, with the goal of eventually getting to this place where in the Metroplex there's joint treatment of all of these issues. What we found is everyone's trying hard, everyone's working. People are generally very aware, institutions are generally very aware of the credit awarding practices that are available. But as in the case of UT Arlington, only last summer did we have our own task force really dive into it to ensure that we are giving maximum credit, not credit that we feel like fits, not credit that a faculty member said, yeah, we could probably give credit there, but maximum credit, so that it removes as many course requirements out of the way to speed these great people along to graduation. And so that will be the next meeting. We think we'll probably have, again, 70 to 100 people at this one, because it will include some registrars, associate deans, it will include some academics in the fields that most often provide this kind of credit, so that they will learn and know, because sometimes at an institution at the end of the day, you have to have the academic unit, the department, the faculty on board to say, yes, indeed, I will give credit for that leadership course to fit this. And so there's a lot of work that goes on with regard to that. And so that's our game plan on that one. Is it a good kickoff? Or is it okay? All right.
We're gonna pass it to Barbara. So Barbara, what is Texas Women's University doing to support adult learners, whether military or otherwise?
First thing I have to say is my surprise when you handed me the microphone is that typically at my institution I have people pulling the microphone away. They're typically not handing it to me. So I was a bit startled by that. A few comments I want to add on to what Troy was saying, if I may, on the military. We are looking at, we hope, a May 1st is the date, and we're hopeful that TWU will host this event at our Dallas campus, which is going to be more central. We hope about as central as we can get in this very diverse area of ours. And on the issue of military, a number of us, particularly those institutions that have, say, health programs, and I'll use nursing as an example, we've been awarding academic credit for military training in health. I mean, those servicemen and women who have been served in the military. So we've been doing that for a number of years. And we've been able to say this level of training in the military equals this block of credit. And so there are, as Troy mentioned, some simple computations, if you will. This equals that. Well, training in the military varies equally as much as our programs vary. So there are greater conversations that have to occur as to what those equivalences should be. Keeping in mind that we are still responsible as higher ed institutions to ensure the fidelity of the degree. So when we're looking at credit, we do reasonably have to say, yes, these experiences convert in a way that we can demonstrate to recognizable credit, because for better or for worse, we still operate on the SCH currency. That's what we sell. We sell semester credit hours. And so we have to be responsible as to what that conversion is going to be. Similarly, I think we have to be very much aware of what it means to be military friendly. It is first and foremost application of credit, but it's lifestyle. These are folks who are transitioning, probably more so than any other individual. Lifestyles are changing. They may have childcare needs. They have the same kinds of work needs that so many other individuals have. So what does it truly mean to be military friendly? I'm going to shift for a moment to the question that was posed as non-traditional student. And the first thing I will say is, we no longer know what the traditional student is in this region. You did. Okay. Well, I'll give an example, just for TWU. The average age of a TWU undergrad is 27. Okay, that is not the 18 to 23 that we used to think of as traditional students. So are they non-traditional? Are they adult learners? How do they fit, into this matrix? A few of the initiatives that we have underway are very similar to what nearly every four-year institution has put in place. We're really looking at a number of different ways to address the adult learner, particularly the returning learner. Because, as was mentioned earlier, you can't rely just on that pathway, right from high school into college. We have so many individuals in this region that have attained some college credit but have no degree. And often they have acquired not only some credit, but they have acquired some debt. So how do we enable those individuals to come back in a mode that is both time and money friendly for them to complete a degree? Most often when you talk with students in this situation, they will tell you persistence to them means two things. One of two things runs out, time or money, and sometimes it's both. So how can we prepare programs, whether it is doing them online, doing them in shortened semesters, doing them in compacted programs that are able to light the light that says, yeah, you can do this. And we have to be able to do it spontaneously, because unlike the high school senior who has been planning their education, has been talking to counselors, many times these folks are simply listening to a radio ad or seeing something on Facebook, and they say, can I do that? Well, maybe I can. And in order for that to work for those students, we have to be able to respond quickly and say, yes, you can. And for us, particularly at the four-year institution, that's probably the hardest thing we do. I will gladly admit that our community college folks are much more responsive and able to say, yeah, come on in. We have to think about it just a little bit more. So there are many programs, BAAS programs, that enable students who have a technical degree to move into an applied baccalaureate program, which is, many of you will recognize as basically what we call an upside down degree. These are individuals who have completed their technical training and are now coming back to complete some upper division hours and complete core requirements. So the typical baccalaureate starts with gen ed, with a core, and then you move into your major. So you are learning more and more about less and less, a more focused degree. The applied baccalaureate is absolutely the other way around. These are individuals who have studied their technical training. One example I can give is sonography or rad tech or automotive. They know their major. They have studied their area of expertise. What they need is all those other requirements so that they can complete the baccalaureate. So we, as many others, have programs like that. I think you're also seeing a number of what we call comeback programs. We initiated one at our university to identify not only just students throughout the whole Metroplex, but our own students. Students that stopped out over the last 5, 7, 10 years. Where are you now? What are you doing? Can we bring you back? So we made a proactive effort to evaluate their transcripts before we called them and said, okay, this is what we know about where you are. And you know what? You only need 12 hours to complete a degree. And we are able to help you put that together. Those are time-intensive efforts, but I think if we are all doing them, I think it gives us an opportunity. One thing I will ask, and I will pass the microphone, that I will, when you look at this, And we've all talked about the complexity of the Metroplex. I want you to add on top of that, to Troy's point earlier, there is a network called DARN, and I did not make this up. DARN. It is the Dallas Area Recruitment Network. There are 67 additional institutions that recruit in this area because they know, as Troy mentioned, this is where we think the students are. So when we're talking about how to serve the population in this region, it takes all of us working together to figure out how to make some cohesive sense of all the activity that's going on in this region. And I'll leave you with the one question: whose job is it? Those of you who know me say I've always said, whose rule is it? In this case, it's whose job is this? When you listen to all of your job titles, nobody has this in your title, and yet we're all here trying to work on the same initiative. So it's all our jobs.
All right, so thank you, Barbara, because you talked not just about the educated population, but also about completion. And so Courtney, we're going to turn to you. Tell us a little bit about what UT Dallas is doing in this area.
Sure. Well, I appreciate the context provided by Troy and Barbara because it's really important while we have a captive audience to talk about the shifting higher education landscape that we are now in, especially as an institution like UT Dallas, in which we have been very spoiled by the wonderful secondary education that many of you in this room provide. And our top 10 feeders have given us such great traditional, hate to say it, freshmen and incoming transfer populations to use for many years for our rapid growth. However, I'm no longer just, sending text messages to friends at UTA for their billboards on 75. I am now worried about Cornell being at regional recruitment events. What is Carnegie Mellon doing here? Why is California here? Because they're here to take that more traditional, the younger, straight from high school to college population out of Texas. That is the future that we are facing now, right? It is a competitive market. You couple that with the recent Department of Justice decision that makes higher ed recruitment the wild, wild west for 4 years at an institution like ours. You better get ready, because this is now forcing institutions like mine, especially within our culture, our campus climate, to be more creative in how we are trying to meet these kind of completion goals, because we don't have these robust programs in place. But now, this kind of giving the gloom and doom speech to our faculty, you see them start to be like, oh, what do you mean? Our top 10 feeders are now being targeted by these schools with higher rankings than us. Like, yeah, that's right, get ready. And I give them crazy eyes and they're starting to listen, which is great, because now we have set up our Military Veterans Center, which provides this really great kind of transition programs to ensure the quality of the military students' experience once at our campus, to now pre-articulate credit and collaborate academic programs for military training programs. And so now, while we don't have this huge portfolio of existing programs, now we have the context, necessary to start to promote that. And we're doing so on our campus, so they're going to be attending some of these regional meetings. We're really excited to see now on our campus to start to have some of that, contributing to completion as well.
Okay. So let's ask Marlon. So Marlon, we've heard about some of the things that are happening in terms of military credit, some things that are happening intentionally to review incoming students' transcripts, to identify ways to accelerate to a degree. We've also heard about the increasing pressure and competition from competitive, selective institutions. Now, you have a slightly different mission and take the top 100% who apply. How does the mission of the community college, and specifically Tarrant County College, how are you addressing the need to increase our educated population, support completion, but specifically serve adult learners?
So several years ago, when our new chancellor came on board, we came to an agreement through a lot of discussion to 3 goals. One college being one, student ready being the other, and serving the community. So those 3 goals. And so being student ready really fits into the adult learner, because we are open door. We accept you from where you are. And we have lots of different opportunities and pathways that you can choose from. You can go continuing education, you can go credit, you can start at a basic level 1 certificate, which is a very short term certificate. You can go to a level 2, which might take you a little bit longer, all the way up to an associate's degree. So the opportunities for us and for us to serve the students, we have a variety of different programs in terms of law enforcement, fire academy, EMT, the allied health programs. And so we also look at prior learning assessment. We have a very active group that advises across the college, and so they meet regularly and update the manual for prior learning assessment. And faculty are directly involved with the types of tests or process that they receive that credit. So it's very important to us to stay on top of that because we know that the world changes and most of our students are part-time. So I mean, it's now less than 20%, I believe, that are full-time. I mean, all of our students are part-time. They have other jobs. They have a lot going on. They have families, and so we have to be able to meet them where they are and provide support services where they need them. So we have care teams at all of the campuses as well as veterans centers so that they can reach out for that support. We've also started a program for those that may be underserved in terms of might be homeless or need extra resources in terms of food. So we have food pantries available for those students so that we can encourage them and keep them on the right path. So those are the types of things that we've made a conscious effort about.
So let's pass it back to Courtney. We're going to start with her next. All right, so we talked about serving a particular student population, our military students. We've also talked about our adult learners, our learners who may have food or housing insecurity. But another big piece that's part of it, and Barbara talked about this a little bit, is taking people's credits and actually figuring out how they would align towards a degree. So why don't we start with you, Courtney? Talk about educational pathways and the way that you are helping students to move through your degree programs, and also how you're aligning those programs with good jobs after they graduate.
Sure, for us that's particularly important because where we are geographically located, we have a lot of new corporate headquarters kind of moving in, and so that's prompted us to shift from our Texas Instruments, Linux, and engineering base to being more receptive to new and emerging industries and business. So we have really active advisory boards throughout all of our schools on our campus that have representatives both from P through 16, but also our local industry, our local businesses. But we're being more creative and qualitatively assessing this from the perspective of both the students and of prospective employers. So we do a senior exit survey when you graduate from UT Dallas, and it's very important to us for a student because perception is reality, right? We know what we want our student learning outcomes to be for every student, but are we actually accomplishing those, and does the student feel like they are equipped to go into the workforce? That is paramount for us. So what we do on that survey is we ask them about the skills that they believe they have gained at UT Dallas that's aligned with the jobs that they are now interviewing for, we hope, or that they have secured. And we're matching that qualitative data. I'm glad you brought this up in your earlier presentation about data with Texas Workforce Commission data to see where our students actually going and working. Does it align with the CIP code of their degree program, which we think fits the skills that we think we're giving them while they're at our institution. But we're also surveying our employers. Anytime you come to a prospective student event on our campus, anytime you request to post a job on our campus, we're going to ask you about the students you're hiring from us because we want that direct feedback. Other ways we are keeping students and kind of contributing to the persistence at our institution, we're pretty fortunate, Troy and I, from a UT system perspective, because we have some new mechanisms in place that have allowed us to be more proactive in our outreach efforts. One of those being a graduation help desk, which is to help identify, we hope proactively, but sometimes reactively, any barriers student might encounter on the 4-year, we hope a 4-year, or less traditional pathway to completing a credential at UT Dallas, and that allows us to refer students who are on campus student pantry to say, oh, hey, we noticed you're not re-enrolled for the next semester and you have an account hold. We'll collaborate with the Office of the First Lady on a more creative payment plan. Maybe it's only $50 every week you can contribute instead of $1,200 every 4 weeks. So being more creative and that type of outreach has been helpful for us, especially trying to be more holistic in how we approach student success, both all the way from the time they hit our door all the way through to making sure they do have gainful employment or continuing their education.
Sir Troy. Beyond the work that you've been doing specifically with our military students to give maximum credit, what other things are you doing to help transfer students to move on towards degrees, and also your native student population complete degrees and then move into careers in our area?
That's a great question. A couple quick examples. A bit of joke first. Because I love that Barbara mentioned the darn. Because Texas' dirty little secret. Does anybody know how many top high school students leave Texas every fall to go to another state? Want to guess? You want to start a bidding? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000? 4 times 3,000? 13,000 top students will leave Texas. It's second or third highest in America in terms of states that have migration out. And so I refer to these out-of-state universities that live here as the Dallas Area Marauders Network. And, but all that joke, though, to ask that we all, most in here do work for the state, right? We're paid there. I know sometimes it's flashy to have a child or a graduate or a student in our program go off to Harvard or go somewhere. But Texas has to be very careful about this. These are students with the highest scores, and there's a bigger percentage of them with the ability to pay that are choosing to leave the state. And so when you look at what's left, the intersection of the data with the changing demographics, who's leaving, this is a real issue. And so I want to just ask you, partners, especially the school districts, remember Texas is awesome. The higher ed institutions, public, private, community colleges are great. And obviously this is a great state to work in, and this Metroplex is one of the best. Be careful about encouraging too much migration out. Those people that left would have been your doctors, would have been your attorneys, would have been your engineers. When you get like this and you're needing help, those are the children that will be in other states working. So thank you for that PSA and the joke. I hope you enjoyed that. But we indeed, a UTA president left, and as president of the University of Alabama, now has one of the biggest siphons out of Texas to the University of Alabama. You know this, right? So
We're offering them full scholarships.
full scholarships. They love Texas. SEC goal, LSU.
And they go to Tech or Texas or A&M, and they have to pay everything. So they are luring them like crazy.
Arkansas.
Arkansas has buses that leave from 75 right here and take the students out. Sure, just go visit those. So the transfer, and this is key because a lot of the transfer population, where's a lot of it come from? Okay, but where were they before they were that? High school. Often this is lost. In fact, my boss, when he's asking me, what are our admission numbers? There's a sense that somehow the community college transfers never were high school students. They're this old population. You know what I mean, Courtney, right? Well, it's like, that's where they started. And so demographics, and you look at the witchy data that again dispel this myth that the high school graduate numbers are just going up and we're just going to have endless and plenty of them. This year, the witchy data that were put out in 2013 shows that there's 1% fewer Texas high school graduates. Now, thanks to migration in, it's probably actually going to be even or maybe 1% now. 1% high school graduates, maybe. Again, it's not what you feel. So the community college enrollments, the transfers are mostly based on those previous years of graduates, right? And I'll tell you, this is where we've got to do better. We have got to, and I don't mean just university, I mean community colleges, I mean the Texas Applied Texas Committee. There are too many hurdles to be able to start a course at a university or community college. There are just too many. A swirling student has to go back and pay $250 to get a transcript again because it took one course in the summer, and the university won't let them start because of that. Let's just take a little simple one like that. What all is asked for to be able to enroll and take a course? The forms are not easy. They're not user-friendly. This to me, for our Metroplex advisory group, is something we've got to get serious about. Because it's easy to, when you work in the bureaucracy, well, we've worked on that. We've got a fleet committee of great people, and, it's asking all the right questions, checks all the compliance and audit. But when it comes to making it easy for swirling transfer students that are coming from my institution and going right over there, you're attending, it's just too difficult. So we're working on a few things, and I will say the Data Center out of UT Austin, again, in some ways we're fortunate in the UT system to have some connections, but it's not exclusive to UT system. Texas State has partnered up with Austin Community College, for example. We have some convenings that are working on this, and I just got one of the best reports I think I've received. And you can, and I say surgical, I really do believe you have to surgically figure out the problem. You can talk in these platitudes and issues and problems and challenges, but eventually to make something happen, to achieve an outcome, you've got to get surgical. And the Dallas County Community College sent our university its list, and to UNT Dallas as well, because the three institutions are together to try to sort out field of study disconnects. To sort out some, in addition to FOS, some pathways and some individual course disconnects, right? And to get really serious about it. And we have a 90-day, we only have about 79 days left. I'm getting a little worried here, but we got the report, and it indicates exactly what field of study curriculum, and for those of you that aren't familiar with that basically is a set of courses that no matter where you take it into Texas Public, it should transfer around. Right? So if you're an architect intended major, you take these 5 courses and they'll transfer no matter where you go. That's the notion. The state, it's well intended, but as we talked this morning, I did not talk, it's not really implemented yet. But this kind of process is going to implement that among 3 key partners where a lot of students are going back and forth and taking courses. And it will improve the hurdle situation that I talked about earlier. So I'm looking forward to those results, and that's one of the examples I give.
Great. All right, I'm going to jump down to Marlon. Andy. All right, so, Marlon.
Yes.
Let's talk about the last goal that we have in the region, which is the high school to higher education. Okay?
Okay.
What is Tarrant County College doing to help more students who graduate from high school to move directly into higher education, move into higher education within a year after graduation? So that means having your dual credit students continue after they graduate, and also those students who aren't yet college ready to move into higher.
So take that in a couple of different parts. In terms of the growth in dual credit, just for our institution, I know many other areas are experiencing the same thing. We have, with the SAC COC, we're in the midst of a 50 report. And in terms of growth, from 2014 to 2018, we had 34 dual credit sites that were added with 50% or more of their college credit being earned at that site. And so they're actually coming to visit us in a lovely visit in March, so we're looking forward to that. They're going to visit a selection of those sites. So in terms of reach, I mean, we've just grown exponentially in terms of offerings for dual enrollment. And it started, of course, with general ed, most English, history, those core courses, but now it's starting to evolve to the career and technical courses. So they're wanting to see more of those sign language or RTVB, radio television. They're wanting to see welding, and so we're starting to now get a lot of requests as it's becoming more popular with the TEA and the P-Tech schools that are developing. And so trying to keep up with that is pretty daunting in terms of coverage, because all across the county we have a lot of area to cover in terms of high schools. So we always ensure that we are meeting the rigor and the academic standards that we need to. And then we also make sure that they know that services are available to them, and they can continue their education with us at any of our locations. Many have their sights on transfer to some of my partners here, but in terms of cost and in terms of having the opportunity to stay home and complete those first 2 years is attractive to a lot of students. So we have a lot of students that remain with us or end up coming back to us because of that reason. So it's important for us to keep in touch and make sure that they know that we're here to serve them wherever they are. And in terms of growth, we need to ensure that we're doing a better job with our recruiting efforts for those students that may not be taking dual credit, to ensure that they know that we have an open door policy. We can meet them where they are. They may have to take some developmental courses in order to be college ready. So that's where our district director of college readiness and dual credit comes in and kind of helps with that pathway, as well as Dr. Walker is very much part of that process with those options for students. And so keeping in touch with them and also bringing them to campus whenever we can. So we have opportunities for the little ones to come in and do robotics or Legos or different things. And so that's encouraging that college is available to them. It's accessible to them.
So Barbara, so Troy talked a little bit about some of the hurdles that he's identified that students are having to overcome to move into higher education, right? They could be Apply Texas, it could be other things, maybe FAFSA completion, maybe financial aid, other areas of financial aid if you're undocumented, on and on and on, right? Or even making a transition if you were in dual credit in high school to being an undergraduate after graduation so you can continue on. So talk a little bit about what you're doing to help with this high school to higher ed transition.
A few things. I want to make I'm going to revert back one comment very quickly.
You can.
Because we've talked a good deal about the darn or the damn. I'm going to have to change that. Sorry, you weren't there. You probably were not aware that that's what it But I think that the importance of our discussion here is going back to where we started with the data. It is true that that in Texas, we have a large number of students who leave the state and often go to prestigious institutions. It is also true that those of us who are in enrollment or have been in enrollment are very conscious of how we are going to recruit students to maintain our numbers and graduate students. This conversation, though, is primarily about not those students, but the students who are not going anywhere. And I think the data show us that there are enough of those students, those are the students over which we should be competing. How do we, in this conversation, because we all have other jobs and other parts of our work and other aspects of the things that we do. But our conversation here is, how do we reach those students who are disproportionately minority students? How do we reach those students and encourage them to move from high school into either community college or a four-year institution? TW is partnering now with Dallas Promise. And I'm sure many of you have heard some things about Dallas Promise, and I'm sure some of them are wonderful and some of them are, but we have partnered with Dallas Promise, and I think there are a number of those initiatives that speak directly to this issue of how do we encourage students to move right from high school into college. And I'll just say one simple tool, because a number of us have talked about it, and Troy rightfully so, how difficult it is for a student to get admitted, get their transcripts, complete their FAFSA. I mean, sometimes if you just look at the checklist, it's 15 items long, right? Even in the simplest scenario. Well, there is one initiative that has come out of Dallas Promise, which is called Green Light. And Green Light makes it easier for a student to submit all of their transcripts in one place. It is essentially a secure data repository. It took me a long time to figure out what it was, but now that I've finally figured out what it is, the simplest part is students can put their high school transcripts, they can put any certificate work they've done, they can put their community college transcripts in, and then when they apply to another institution, all they have to do is go back to that one app and say, send my information to one of the receiving institutions. And if you are a receiving institution, I will tell all my colleagues, there is no charge. All you do is you say, yes, we will be a green light receiver, and the student can see that information, pull down those institutions that are green light receivers, and say, okay, send all my information to TWU. Because as a number of us have mentioned, it is absolutely true. So many of our students have attended multiple institutions. And all too often we'll be sitting on an application that just says incomplete. Because they sent one transcript, but maybe not this transcript, or maybe not one other. So I would just say, look into it. I mean, as a receiving institution, as I say, it's free of charge. If you want to be a sending institution, I will tell to my community college partner, there is a charge. But to be a receiving institution, there is not.
But the kids do not have to pay for it, it's the institution that pays for it.
Correct. Or for the district, as I understand,
Right.
the district pays for the student.
Right.
Am I correct? For those from Dallas? The district pays for that, pays the fee, and then the student accesses it free of charge. Elizabeth, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, and school districts are also on it, I believe, like Dallas ISD is transitioning, so it's not just community college transcripts, it's high school, it's everything. And what's so cool about it was they actually demoed it, because you're like, the first question I'm sure every registrar is asking is, what do you mean by secure? It's blockchain technology, and I actually watched them download a transcript, try to edit it in Photoshop, and then have it validated, and it wasn't accepted. So I don't understand blockchain technology, but they built this system where it truly is secure, where students can't tamper with it, and it is as easy as opening up my app, selecting TWU, and pressing a button for free. It's incredible. Incredible.
And, you know, I think there are, that group is looking at other things that it might be able to do in the future, you know, including sending applications and all sorts of other things. But for now, just that one piece of the technology is just incredible.
All right, so in the interest of time, because we have run not just through our panel time, but through our reflection and discussion time, which is great. All right, so you got 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes across all 4 of you. I'm saying like a minute and 15 seconds each, okay? Tell me what you think your biggest success or challenge is in meeting these goals right now. What's the biggest success or challenge? You can go positive or negative, I don't care which one. Let's start with Marlon, let's work our way down.
Biggest success or challenge? So in terms of our work with guided pathways, we've been on a journey for the past 2.5 years in terms of looking at the pathways for all of our programs and aligning our curriculum so that it makes sense when students are taking certificates, level 1, level 2, that leads them to the associates, and they're not wasting any time or money in terms of achieving that goal. That's been very important to us. We've been very intentional about it, and we hope to have some things published to the web soon in terms of that development. So that's big successes that's coming out of that work. In terms of challenges, I think dual credit continues to be a huge challenge for us, just in terms of scope and management, especially with the career and technical programs being added to it. So just keeping on top of that and managing that is going to continue to be something we have to work on.
Because anytime you work across institutions.
That's right.
All right.
Biggest success, two things. One, the language. We were talking earlier. We talked a little bit about what does P16 mean. I don't think there's anyone in this room that has not used the phrase student success. 20 years ago, we did not talk about student success. We talked about institutional success. We talked about all sorts of things. Everything we do now, rightfully, is focused on student success. For my institution in particular, I'd say that the things of which I am most pleased and most proud, we have configured every approved field of study. Every single one of them that has been approved through the coordinating board is now completely transferable to TWU. That took a whole lot of convincing, cajoling, and maybe a bit of lying to faculty. Can you say that?
It is recorded.
All right. It was a communication challenge. And I would say the other is transfer of transparency. I think that is the one thing for which I am most proud, is that a student will always know when they come to a TWU program. All of the ACGM courses are listed next to our courses in a 4-year college sequence. So if any student who is in any program can look at our program and say, I have completed this, this is what is left to take.
I'll also do two very brief successes. And this is from my very biased institutional perspective, but we established an Office of Community College Relations. We were extremely proud of that because previously we didn't have a lot of continuity in personnel who were interacting with community colleges on our behalf, and I think that will result in us not only, we're officially a sponsor of Christine's organization, we're extremely proud of that affiliation, but I think we'll start to see some more tangible products and partnerships and initiatives that help address equity gaps in our completion, specifically on our campus. But another success that I personally am very proud of on behalf of UT Dallas is engaging our current students in this process. We have now given them a sense of agency by hiring and training them as G-Force mentors, but other programs like our Future Comments program, which puts our current students in our partner schools by encouraging students in 8th grade to take a calculus track so that by the time they're finishing high school, they will complete a calculus, which we all hope makes them more competitive and more likely to have that direct enrollment from high school to college. And once they get to our campus, our student service mentors are very altruistic and they see their peers through to completion, even and starting in alumni kind of mentorship roles too. So I'm personally very proud of that.
Great. All right, it's 10:45 because they went a little long, so we know no more.
I think Barbara would say that I have a mic. There's only one. So partnerships, and really that's all that's going to get done. And those partnerships are with community colleges represented here. They're partnerships with the region, the advisory group. There are also partnerships with the schools, whether it's Go Centers, whether it's teaching academies or STEM academies or et cetera, those kinds of things. At UTA, the commitment to access and excellence that we've got has led to some really good outcomes in terms of social mobility, some high rankings for our institution, affordability, underrepresented student degree earnings, and all of that. The challenge, and I leave this, and this is very personal, but I've got 3 children in public schools right now. One went to a Title I school. I just ask all the people in the schools to try your best to keep everyone fresh. The teachers, the principals. I see the glum face of the children when they come in or they feel under-inspired. And because they thought they were going to go on a curricular track and then someone says, well, maybe IB, it's not that big of a deal. And these kids, kids get a message that the striving and the excellence and the being inspired, it really gets watered down quickly. So I would just ask that just keep that beat. Get the children to work hard, encourage that, expect that, and continue to inspire them. That's what we need for students up and down the socioeconomic and across the great diversity of our state.
All right, please join me in thanking our panelists. So, Jean, you have a gap between 10:45 and 11 on your agenda?
Yes, yes. If you all would like to take a short break, you're welcome to do that. Please thank our panelists, and Christine, we have small gifts for them
Yes, I
up
do.
there, so if you would do that. But we have just a small break if you want to use the restroom, and then what we'd like you to do is to come on back, work in your committees for a little while, and then we'll convene promptly at 11:30 and have our committee reports.
It makes me think about